Hi there, everybody. I am excited to introduce Matt Pocock. Matt is somebody who I have followed on Twitter for, ever since I think he joined on there. I found Matt pretty early. Matt is obviously a TypeScript expert. Some people might call him the TypeScript guy. And I think that describes him pretty well. So I've got Matt on here today because Matt has had some big success by creating a TypeScript course. And what we want to talk about on this episode is how he got there. And I'm really excited too, because Matt is a wonderful teacher, and that's obviously part of how he got there. But there's a lot of nuance that I think you can get out of this. And our goal in this episode is to help other people who might be interested in authoring a course one day understand all the work involved and the recipes that they might consider for having similar success. So Matt, do you want to briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll dive in?
Yeah, I'm so excited to be talking to you, Corey, as well, because you're like the doyen of all things React on Twitter. So I love following you for ages. So it's really great to talk to you in person. I've been doing this now full time. So teaching TypeScript, selling TypeScript courses, going to places and teaching TypeScript for around 2 years full time, I think. So in about November 2022, I left Vercel, and then I basically went full time doing courses and teaching TypeScript. And before that, I was working as a dev and working basically on some open source libraries like Xstate and doing a little bit of sort of TypeScript DevRel in my spare time. And yeah, that's kind of how we got here.
So you were at Vercel for a while, and I remember that, and I followed you at that period, and I remember they were getting Turbo Repo off the ground, and you were working on their docs and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
You also had a stint at Xstate, I believe, right?
At Stately, the company of Xstate, yeah.
Yeah, Stately is the company, right? So do you feel like that, what was the tipping point where you start to realize, oh, wait, I think I should write a course on TypeScript?
Yeah. So I'd been the kind of unofficial DevRel for Xstate for quite a while. And Xstate was this library is still very, very good. They released V5 recently. This library authored by a guy called David K. Piano, or David Khorshid on Twitter. And he's kind of like the state machine, state charts guy. Basically, he's the guy for that. And I was really interested in it because I'd used it at work to build something really, really complicated that I just couldn't have gotten done without Xstate. And so I just fell in love with Xstate really and just started, using it everywhere, making tools for it, actually trying to improve the TypeScript experience for it. And I then joined the core team, which is basically was at the time me, a guy called Mateusz Brzezinski, who's this absolute OSS wizard, Anderist Rake on Twitter, and David. And then a company was formed out of that, blah, 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 blah. And I was really trying to create materials for Xstate. I was answering questions in the Discord server. And when I joined Stately, I was sort of doing that for my day job as well. And the moment that I realized, okay, maybe there's something more here, was I was doing these videos on Xstate and they're getting, Xstate has a much smaller community than TypeScript. It's a very small subset. And so I was doing stuff that was getting traction, having good conversations, but I never really felt a sort of explosive power behind it. And then in February 2022, I made a video on advanced TypeScript, literally just a 2-minute video, uploaded it to Twitter of me doing some TypeScript magic, basically just transforming one type to another type using like a map type with a bit of key remapping or something. And it didn't like go crazy numbers like I've actually got a diary entry that says, whoa, I got like 30 followers off that one tweet. You know what I mean? Like, whoa, it's going crazy. It's like that meme of this doing numbers, man. But I just felt a different push behind it and a different energy. And actually, as soon as I made that video, as soon as it got the reception, I felt something different. And I think that Sunday I recorded 18 of those little 2-minute videos. And I just started, I know, because I just thought, let's just do it. And like, I just had a day off or something, or my wife was doing something, was away. So I just thought, bloody hell, I'll do it. And I just like cranked them out and scheduled them for Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the next few weeks. And it just went, whoom. I could just felt a completely different energy. And I kind of knew then that there was something there.
I love that piece because this is a piece of advice that I hear often from people. Like, you've got to experiment and try a lot of different things, especially when you're thinking about being an entrepreneur. you're saying, I'm probably going to have a lot of ideas. And at some point, one of them will finally tick. And then I've got to decide to really go heavy on that one thing. And that's what you were looking for. You go, okay, this had success in a way that I didn't expect. It's also one of the things that I love about X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, that it's this opportunity to have these cheap tries at a lot of different ideas and then get feedback from people. And over time you go, okay, I'm finding my own voice. I'm realizing what people want to hear from me. And then I'll double down on the good stuff. And that's obviously what you've done. So that I didn't realize that was the inception story there. So that gets you to the point where you're going, okay, this is worth me creating some content and putting those videos out. But how do you get from that point to where you say, I want to create a big multi-hour course experience?
Yeah. So you're right. It's all about stacking up your bets, right? Those videos were very, very cheap, easy for me to make. And they were very small bets that I could just put on the table and go, all right, let's just put these out there, see what feedback I get. And I did the 18 because I just felt inspired. If being a more reasonable guy now, probably I would just sort of have cranked them out sort of, 2 or 3 a week or something. And so those videos, they took maybe about 15 minutes to make each. You know what I mean? Like that's maybe generous too, more like 10 minutes, because it was literally just recording QuickTime, bam, go. And like the decision then to go big after that was, okay, I need to, like those are the little sort of sugary treats I'm sort of tossing out for people to enjoy, right? The weird thing about this business is that what gets the attention is the sugar, right? Is the tips, is the, I didn't realize that, the sort of, little brain expanding moments. But people don't really want to pay for that. What they want to pay for are vegetables, right? It's a very unintuitive model, which is you sort of like get the people in like by sort of leaving a trail of sweets behind you, and then you just throw a load of carrots at them and they end up going, yes, that's actually what I want. Because honestly, people just want to know that you have a kind of passion for what you're teaching, actually. And the tips show that you have the passion. And then when they realize, I actually do need to progress in my career, I have a material reason for wanting to get better at something, then you show them actually, okay, yeah, I can do that too. I can help you there. So I knew that I could see that progression all the way through. And I knew that I needed some vegetables to go along with the sugar, essentially. And so I don't know if you know this actually, but I used to be a voice teacher. So I used to be a singing teacher, voice coach for about 6 years. And when I was doing that, I was working I had a day job actually teaching people. People would come to my house, or I would go to drama schools, teach Shakespeare and stuff, and like acting and all this sort of stuff. And I thought in the back of my head, okay, what's a model for this where I can earn some passive income? So I've been thinking about this for years. Like this was 2012. I was sort of starting to think about this, right? And actually, I knew almost immediately the whole model just clicked into my head. Right, we've got these lovely tips. People are interested in them. That's the sugar. Lead them to the vegetables. There's got to be some sort of platform where I can have my own stuff. And that's where it just felt obvious, really.
Mm. That reminds me of the old Steve Jobs quote that you can only connect the dots by looking backwards. Like you can see how all these experiences in your past led you to this point where all of a sudden you have this epiphany and you go, everything has prepared me for this moment. This is obviously what I need to do because I've had this, like no one else has had the exact same experiences as you. And it made you uniquely capable of being really successful at this thing. Because that thing with the voice coach piece, I was aware of that. And I find that fascinating too. I have a singing background, so some of that applies as well. And I've had an interest in voice coaching. Like I've listened to books on that topic before because I found, okay, if I'm going to speak more and I'm interested in YouTube and those sorts of things, your voice is your tool. So
100%.
Use it well. And you're also very lucky to have the British accent too. I mean, as an American, at least, we all love it.
It does help, actually. It really does help.
I think it does.
Honestly, it's quite an advantage. I think the bald head helps as well. You know what I mean? Actually.
Oh, I totally agree. Yes. As a fellow bald head. Yes. Okay. So the other thing that I want to emphasize that you said, you talked about inspiration. And I want to emphasize to people that inspiration is perishable. You took that moment where you saw something work and that got you so excited that you go, I can't help myself. I'm going to go create 18 videos right now because I've got this little window. And if you had said, in a few weeks, maybe I'll try
Yeah.
something, your inspiration fades, but you found momentum and then you kept that momentum going. So that's another
Yeah.
thing. I found that really powerful, to pay attention to that.
Yeah, that's something maybe we can revisit sort of later in the story. But that is the kind of motivation aspect of this, and the desire to keep it going. To keep the fire burning is something that I struggle with a lot. Actually, especially after we had the sort of big success launching Total TypeScript, my motivation sort of dropped off a cliff there because actually I realized, oh, it's working, and I realized my entire motivation all the way to that point had been, I just want to see something working. I want to see this machine actually come to life. And once it came to life, I just thought, oh, well, cool. I've done it now. And so having to actually turn this into a job, try to rekindle the inspiration. I've had a bit more success with that recently, which we can talk about maybe later. Is just a constant battle. It really is, and you have to catch the waves as they come, because you have to be self-motivated in this game, and motivation is complex, and you can't always drive it the way it wants to be driven.
Well, you're hitting on something that I find interesting, because I think you and I are a lot alike in that we really enjoy learning. Like, learning sort of is its own reward, exploring something new and going deeper. And I love seeing a tweet of yours that I go, okay, I looked at that code and I can't quite parse it. There's a lot of generics going on. There's a lot to absorb here. That's a pattern that I haven't used. And in those sorts of situations, I actually get excited because I go, okay, this is a sort of a mind challenge. But what I'm curious about is, so you end up digging into this sort of thing, and you get really good at it. You publish this course and you've hit on it, like you said. So after that, you sort of have this feeling of, okay, what's the next thing? And everybody feels that whole thing. I saw you tweet out just a few days after publish, you were interested in Node, and you're thinking like maybe Node is the next thing that you go big on. I saw you tweeting recently about maybe a JavaScript course. Is your sort of nervous feeling of, I have hit the end of TypeScript, because it is a finite amount of info, and so it's obvious that you've got to find your next thing?
I mean, so at this point, I've published a lot of TypeScript material. I've written an entire book on TypeScript, which will be published pretty soon, but it's available online right now. Sort of early draft is available online. I've built an advanced course, which is like 3 full-length workshops. I've got a sort of more intermediate beginners-y course, which is around 200 exercises, 220 exercises, absolutely massive. And then I've got this advanced React thing as well, and I've published a bunch of free tutorials as well. And I think my instinct is that people are... I'm in a funny position now, because I'm obviously the TypeScript guy. But then you look at someone like Kent C. Dodds. And Kent C. Dodds, when he published his first big thing, which was Epic React, he became, for a while, the sort of... You can't be the React guy because there's Dan Abramov. But you can be a sort of an ancillary guy, right? A sort of secondary guy, a right-hand man. And Kent C. Dodds was the right-hand man of React for a little while. And so there is a model out there for just... I don't necessarily have to be the TypeScript guy. I can just be a good teacher, like Josh Como is, for instance, with CSS and React. And he's got his own style, for instance. I feel like I can develop my own style, and maybe I have already, and transfer that to other domains. Because I think I'm starting to feel like there might be sort of... I want to keep releasing new material, and I don't want to... I don't want my learners to feel like I'm just sort of hammering away at or taking a diminishing slice of the pie. Because total TypeScript, it sort of feels like I've hit like 75% of, maybe 80, maybe even more of like everything that's in TypeScript. Like, it's massive. Been working on it for so long. And I think that if I just open out a new pie, open out a new vista, that will be more exciting for people who want to take my courses than if I just keep approaching 100% in TypeScript.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. And I think that it is an interesting point when you say, do you view it as a door that has to be closed to some degree? Like, you're going to say, all right, I've put all this work into being the TypeScript guy, but now I'm realizing that isn't something sustainable. Like you fast forward to 2 years, you go, I don't want to be the guy that's continuing to like rehash TypeScript fundamentals on Twitter. I want to talk about something else. And trust me, I'm asking this partially selfishly because I'm tired of talking about React. Like React doesn't move fast enough for me to talk about it every day. So I have to find other things to visit about and to keep myself interested in the state of the art. So how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that stopping being the TypeScript guy would be bad. I think being the TypeScript guy is very, very useful and very nice. People ping me with questions. They sort of, in a sort of selfish way, they're kind of providing me with content. They're asking me questions. They're deepening my understanding of what TypeScript learners want and occupying that space as, and we can talk about how that happened. I'm not entirely sure how it happened. People seem to want there to be a person who they can contact. They want a touchstone that they can ping their questions to, who they feel is welcoming. Because Anders Harsberg is really the TypeScript guy. He's you know what I mean? But he's not available.
By definition, yes.
Yeah. He didn't necessarily invent TypeScript, like that's a common misconception, but he's someone who's driven a lot of the design decisions behind it. He's a phenomenal expert. But if you tweet at him, he won't tweet back. They just want someone who's going to tweet them back, who's going to like message them. And so I can't remember I always do this. I can't remember the substance of your question, but it was something about being the TypeScript guy. And
the core thing that I was just getting at was how you think about that pivoting. So it sounds like your answer to me is that you want to continue to be the TypeScript guy. Because the example that I gave was if you look 2 years into the future and you're still the TypeScript guy, are you happy about that? Or do you feel like you're in a rut? Because this is the thing that I think a lot of people that go into a specialization deal with is that specialization has a finite life. And there's a point where we have to say, all right, even though this continues to be wildly popular, at some point, I want to move on, maybe selfishly or because I feel like I've talked this topic to its natural end. Is that something on your mind? Because it sounds like it is. And I say that simply because you started talking about Node more, and I've really enjoyed that too. And that again is a huge ecosystem. Yeah. But it sounds like you want to keep both personas to a degree.
I want to ride two horses. Absolutely. I do. I mean, I do. And it's hard, and it's going to be hard navigating that. And that's a challenge, an interesting challenge. But when I was a singing teacher, I never thought about, I guess I sort of wanted to be a bit more of a voice coach and a singing teacher, but I wanted to just be a really good singing teacher. That's what I wanted. And I wanted to be good at that thing and get better at it slowly over time. And I knew that getting better at it slowly would mean I would get really good quickly and then get just a little bit better over time. And those little increments are really nice. And singing teaching stopped being interesting to me because there's no new version of your larynx coming out. You know what I mean? There's no updates being downloaded to your vocal folds. Like it's just there, right? And some teachers are still teaching the stuff they taught in the 1800s. They're not being, I guess there's a sort of COBOL equivalent there maybe, or like I don't know. But what I loved about this, what we get to teach, is that it's changing all the time, that it's sugary, that it's interesting, that there's meat to the bones, and it just keeps on evolving and keeps on getting better. So I don't know. I still think being the TypeScript guy, continuing to be the TypeScript guy, will continue to be interesting to me. I think if I can be a Node guy as well, I don't think that there's no Node. That's another thing I found interesting about the Node. There's no Node guy. Matteo Collina maybe is the closest. But it would be really interesting to be the Node guy and the TypeScript guy. And I think that's two horses that I can saddle simultaneously.
Well, you brought him up, and you're right. He would probably technically be that. But again, the magic sauce that I want to emphasize that I think has made you so successful is doing the consistent daily work of interacting on Twitter. And I know that's not the whole story, but that was a big piece of, I think, why your course has been so successful is if you're going to be the X guy, whatever X might be, it's daily consistency of people basically seeing again and again, you're the person that comes to mind for this topic. And that requires consistency and interactivity and being willing to, I'm sure in many cases, go back to the editor and go, I don't know how to answer this, but I'm going to dig into it and find an answer. So that's credit to you. So I emphasize that too, because again, you can write a course, but marketing is a big piece of it. And maybe this is a good segue too. So I know, for those that don't know, it may seem to people on the outside that you wrote Total Typescript and it was magically wildly successful, but there's a lot of reasons that it was successful. And I've read a lot about like what you guys have already made public in various ways and followed you closely. So I know part of it is the team behind the scenes too. So for people that don't know, you're using a platform called Badass Courses. Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
So can you give us a sense of what that platform has done for you, and why someone might want to consider that versus just self-publishing or using one of the many other competitors out there that let you sort of publish and host?
Yeah, so Badass, it's inaccurate to call them a platform, I'd say. They're really just a bunch of people, right? It's mainly just two people. It's Joel Hooks, who is extremely talented, knowledgeable deliverer of various learnings. He owns Egghead, and he has worked with Kenzie Dodds and has worked with a ton of successful course developers. And then a guy called Wojciech, who's the sort of web developer designer brain behind it. And these two guys, I sort of mostly found them through Joel. I met Joel at a conference and stuff. And they really just... they partner with you. So they are my partners in Total Typescript. They initially helped me with designing kind of the learning materials for the course. They set up a live workshop for me to go and sort of teach the material first, to road test it. So all the material that's on Total Typescript has been road tested like in live workshops, which is a nice little earner actually before the course comes in. And after that, they handle all the day-to-day stuff. So they handle like refunds. They handle people having questions and stuff. They've got a team of people doing that. And really, I just get left with doing the content. So I just get to push the content out there and do the thing. And of course, like they don't necessarily they're not available for you to sign up on like a sign-up form and you to add your content. You know what I mean? It's all incredibly bespoke, so that everything they do is... I basically just had to DM Joel on Twitter and say, do you want to do this? And he said... At that point, I had a decent amount of explosivity behind me, a bit of rocket fuel in what I was doing. So Joel just said, absolutely yes, and let's just do this. Can I swear on this?
Yes.
Yes? Yeah, he just said, fuck yeah, and let's do it. And... I cannot emphasize how useful that has been for me, just because they've done it, 15, 20 times before. A lot of what they do is advising on like the mailing list. Like my mailing list at the moment has like 42,000 people on it or something. I send out an email every week and sort of just doing like the launch email stuff, the stuff that I had no idea about, that was not in my skill set at all. They handled it in a way that really increased the amount that I sold. And so they take a cut of what I make, and a pretty decent cut, but they absolutely just keep on earning their money. It's absolutely incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's interesting to me. So like I've published through Pluralsight for years, and a lot of what you've talked about, Pluralsight does for you as well. But the thing that I find interesting about the Badass Courses model is that it comes across as though it's yours. Like you've got to actually peel back a little and look around to actually realize, oh no, Matt didn't do all this. Yeah. There's a team of people that did this. And there's the same story with Kenzie Dodd's work. Yep. You go look at Epic React and it just feels like he built this massive platform, and no, there's a team back there. And so what is your take then in the end? How did you decide to work with them versus one of the many other options then? Was there something in particular that really appealed to you?
I didn't actually consider any other options. I knew that I initially thought, okay, I'll build this thing myself. My diary entries from around that time said, okay, I'm sort of planning out a platform, thinking about payment integrations, thinking about this and that, thinking about mailing lists, thinking about how user signups. And I was kind of excited about that. And because who doesn't love building stuff? Like building something from scratch just sounds great. And then I realized, I'd probably have to do that. I probably have to front load a lot of that work while I was still working somewhere. And at Stately, I was working full time. I joined Vercel. Actually, I joined them. This is sound really weird to say, but I joined Vercel kind of like as a part-time job. So I was there 3 days a week for only 3 months on a very short contract. And I did that so that I would have 2 days a week to work on the Typescript course, basically. And I don't know if anyone else had done that, like going to Vercel in that way. But after 3 months, it was going to be, okay, maybe the course flops and I join full-time or something like that. But the decision to join up with a publisher just started to make more and more sense when I started thinking, like, I probably have to build this myself. I have to do this. I have to do this. I never, ever considered going for one of the smaller, or let's say, I don't know, a publisher that would make me control the price. I never thought about like Udemy or things like that. Or I always thought, okay, I want to control everything about this. I want to be in total ownership of the platform, because then I can just make this amazing, amazing, high quality experience. And like the place where I live is not particularly like expensive. I don't have that. At the time, I didn't have any kids, so I didn't have any like outgoings that I really needed to sort of think about. I could actually make quite a big bet with my time and just go for something really high quality and just put something out there that was that would pay back all of the excitement I was getting from the community.
Yeah, I like when you talk about placing a big bet. This is something as an entrepreneur that has been very clear to me, is some of the most successful people I know are willing to work for free for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
And that the level of trust and risk there, for some people, it's not financially an option, but if you can set yourself up in a way where you can do that for a while. And I've thought about that too. I mean, I remember publishing my courses. Now, given I published my first course about a decade ago, and when I did, I had no expectations of making much money off of it. I just did it because it was something that I wanted to exist in the world. And that made it really motivating to me. And to this day, like I speak at conferences for the same reason. I just like speaking. I like teaching. I like helping others. It's sort of its own reward. But the thing that I found is, you dig in and you publish, and then you see, okay, I worked for months on this, and it turned out on an hourly rate, actually, I came out ahead, but I didn't expect that. I thought this was a labor of love, and sometimes a labor of love turns into something that can pay the bills. Can you give me a sense of what's your motivation? What you said, you wanted to have all this control and you wanted it to be big. What drives you?
I mean, it's a very complicated question. And I think it comes back to what I said earlier, which is I like seeing something work. I like the feeling of having an idea and having it go from point A to point Z, basically. And so that what drives me, I think, is not necessarily something particularly noble or particularly kind of high. I like the feeling of a new idea, something I haven't tried before, a sense of novelty, a sense of honestly, I have to like, I'm not sure that I feel particularly motivated anymore by higher ideals. Is that's a strange thing to say, because I've worked as a teacher for a long, long time, and like the reciprocity you get as like as a singing teacher, sort of actually seeing people improve in front of your eyes is wonderful, and I love going out doing live workshops doing that. And that motivation I found sort of like really like got me through for a time, but I'm starting to sort of like, it's oddly sort of like cynical worldview that I'm sort of proposing here, but it doesn't feel that way. It's kind of, I'm trying at all times to be the best that I can be at what I'm doing. But that motivation by itself is not always enough. I feel like I have to keep on putting fuel on the fire somehow and keep on trying to burn at my top limits. And that is something I struggle with a lot. And so something I've been doing recently is I've been building my own platform for basically like building out my courses, oddly enough. So I have now like a sort of database, a sort of CMS that I'm writing my courses in, that will then print out sort of TypeScript courses, and sort of building in some AI elements into it as well, and having everything organized. And that, just the act of building something new is the thing that's fueling me this week, let's say. But next week it might need to be something different. And I found this especially since I've had a kid too. I've taken like a lot of paternity time off, and all I want to be doing right now is just hanging out with my kid. Like that's
Yeah.
honestly what I want. And I don't think your motivation has to be something elemental or something high and noble. It can be, I just want to try this thing. And I've been working off that for the past kind of year or so, 2 years. And that's an odd thing to say, and it feels odd coming out of my mouth because it feels negative, but it's not. I love it. It's always trying to find the next thing.
I admire that honesty. I like it. Yeah, I totally get it. Okay. So you're in a place then, I would imagine, where you could take your foot off the gas for a little while and enjoy the success of Total TypeScript. And I've been in those places before too. And I think that's part of what you're getting at is this, you sort of have to get up and do a little bit of work. And it's this, to me, it's always this feeling of spinning a flywheel that I go interact a little bit in some way with someone. Sometimes it's at a conference, sometimes it's on Twitter, sometimes it's in person going to lunch with somebody. But that feeling of, okay, now I have this sense of the next thing that I want to tackle, and it's partially unpredictable to a degree. But I really like the idea of life having seasons. I don't know if this resonates with you at all. Like, you have this season where you are heads down and you are working as hard as you can to try to get your Total TypeScript course out. And did you have this moment where you say, okay, I could take a deep breath and I've earned a little downtime? It sounds like no, because I got the sense like you're just go.
I know I give off that sense with how much content I'm putting out there, but I've put in a lot of work actually, and we could talk about this maybe more deeply, is to essentially produce high quality content with low effort. That's my constant battle. That's when I'm thinking, how do I get better at this? What new thing can I try? That's always the thing I'm thinking in my head. How can I reduce the amount of effort I'm putting in for the amount of value that I get out? So how do I increase my leverage? I'm at this point now, and that was something I was thinking about even when I was a singing teacher. By the way, I've got like a whole YouTube channel of like accent videos of me teaching people different accents, which was very odd when I started a tech YouTube channel because I was having to sort of do SEO against myself. Very odd. And that feeling of like wanting to increase your leverage, like it's so powerful. And it means that I can get away with these low motivation moments because all I need is a little bit of motivation and I end up getting higher results than I would otherwise. So since January 9th, which was when my first son was born, still only got one son, of course, that timeline doesn't really work out. I've been operating, I think, on a low ebb of motivation, actually. Doesn't appear that way, but I have. And I'm currently just kicking back into gear, starting to feel that again. And this is kind of why I'm sort of scouting around for my next opportunity, my next course. And yeah, I think you've definitely hit upon something there, which is that I have real trouble with my motivation. I don't feel like I don't agree with the characterization that I'm a guy constantly spitting out content and constantly working hard. It doesn't feel like that when I'm, having to do a lot of baby care and sort of like trying not to like. Even before I loaded up this, I downloaded a new game on Steam that I can potentially play when the baby goes to bed. You know what I mean? I'm not one of these guys that's constantly trying to kick out work. I'm just trying to increase my leverage over time, and I'm at a point where I feel like I've got quite high leverage, and that now is a demotivator, confusingly.
Yes, and that's why I bring it up, because you and I are in the same boat there, very much so. And I think there's this risk of you have a success, and then that success gives you the license to take your foot off the gas, and then you dwindle, and it's like. You've got to find the next act to some degree, and you've got to find a motivation to get up each day and work even so. The other thing I want to emphasize is you do have the reputation, at least from my perspective, you come across as somebody who is very consistently putting in hard work every day. And so what I want to emphasize to people too is that is a little slice of your day. You are not spending your full day every day doing this. You have a child to
Yeah.
deal with. You have other concerns and things. So
Yeah.
something that I want to emphasize to people is just like the power of consistency and of having some little portion of it. Something that I've been toying with when I went independent. I actually created a calendar and I said, okay, ideal day. And one thing that I put in there was I said, okay, at 8:00 I'm going to the gym, because I just know if now I don't have any excuse. If I get to set my schedule, I think exercise is important, I'm going to go, and I put it in there. But other things that I've struggled with is I actually had an hour in there where I said learning hour. And I have not done a good job of dedicating that time. Like learning hour comes in and I'm like, oh, but I'm on Twitter right now. And I'm just, it's so, do you have a structure to make sure that you do a little bit of this every day? Like, do you have a commitment, for instance, to say, I write a piece of content every day?
I am trying to develop better habits here. I don't necessarily, whenever I've sort of thought, okay, I want to commit to something, I want to, like even actually sending an email every week is a challenge for me. This is kind of like the first material commitment I've put down, because I just struggle so much with that. I tend to rely on these bursts of inspiration, and those bursts of inspiration have got me this far. You know what I mean? It's odd. It feels like I should be less successful than I am, because I don't feel like I'm playing by the rules in a certain way. I'm just sort of just continually trying to rev myself up out of a low gear. That's how it feels to me. There's an element of this as well, which is like, oh, boohoo! I'm so successful. I'm struggling to get motivation for the next thing. You know what I mean? Like that's something I sort of get a sense of as well. I'm just kind of grateful for the success that I've had, and obviously that success. I don't necessarily feel a motivation to have more of it. I'm to go back to the TypeScript Guy thing. I'm happy just sort of pulling this plow. You know what I mean? Like that. I keep going back to the horse metaphors, oddly. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
It does. It does. Okay, so let's geek out for a second here. You've talked about you're building your own tools. Can you give me a sense of, if you're going to author a course, well, like you're thinking about Node right now. Can you give me a sense of like, how do you do it? What's it look like? If I were to look over your shoulder, what's that process?
Yeah. So the process is, I used to go harder on this, and so I'll describe it this way first. If you imagine all of the things that you need to know about Node, right? All of the discrete pieces of information. So you need to know, let's say, fs.readFileSync, right? You need to know what that function does, how it possibly works. That's like a piece of information. That piece of information, imagine that goes in a graph, not like a graph, like a bar chart or something, but literally like a directed acyclic graph. And that node there in the graph kind of links to other things in the graph. So it links to, okay, what do you need to know before you understand fs.readFileSync? You probably need to know what fs is, what the difference between like sync and async is as well. That's kind of in there as well. And so you end up with this graph of things where you kind of go, okay, that piece of information, I need to know that before that before that. And I generally do this visually as well. So I have, I just go into TL Draw or Excalidraw and just draw it out with the arrows and everything. And then from there, you have the structure, right? You have to teach everything in that order so that you teach the right things in the right time. And then you end up with kind of natural groupings as well. So I should probably teach the file system separately to how I teach buffers, to how I teach paths and that kind of thing. Sort of natural places where people would view it from the top and go, okay, I know how to find that piece of information. And so once you've got that, then this is something I took a big bet on actually with Total TypeScript, which is the style of teaching. It's quite different from courses that I'd taken myself or found before. Which is that pretty much as I possibly can, everything is in a problem solution format. And what I mean by that is, if I'm telling you how to do fs.readFileSync, and what that does is it just reads a file synchronously from your computer. What I do is I go, right, I need you to build this function that reads a file. Go and do it. And I will then, like, the user will sort of go into a bit of a panic and go, okay, oh, fine, I'll click this link that he gave me, right? Oh, yeah. Oh, fs.read file. Oh, fs.read file sync. Okay, cool. Pull that in, put that there. And then I like, I've got like an inbuilt test that goes, yes, you passed. And then I show my solution. I show the trade-offs and I give a bit more deepening information. And the point of that is that you're teaching that person at the very moment that they're hungry for that information, right? That they've just been struggling with building the thing that out there in the world they will be building. And I found that, first of all, that keeps my videos really short because it means I get to just say, like, here's a problem, go. Here's the solution, here's my solution, blah, 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 blah. So 2 very short videos instead of one like 8-minute, 7-minute video. And also it means that they're learning the piece of information at the point where they're most hungry for it. So there's a kind of emotional connection to that information, which then sticks in and it organizes it beautifully so that when they're out there in the world, they will retain that piece of information when they need to build a similar thing. So that's the approach, really, is this directed acyclic graph, organizing it into groupings, into sections, and then building these problem solutions for as much as I can. Sometimes I'll need like an explainer video to like explain what node is, for instance, or explain what FS is, or blah, 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 blah. But that is the kind of fundamental approach.
So I want to emphasize directed acyclic graph sounds really complicated to people, but the core idea that you're getting at is order of operations, realizing that you got to know this before you know this. And that's really important. You don't have to use a DAG for that. Like I sometimes would even just use a plain old outline and I'm dragging things up and down and realizing I got to talk about this before this. The other thing I'd emphasize is you get in here and you say, okay, I'm going to have a problem. I have a solution. Something that someone had shared with me that I found really helpful was the way your brain works is if there's an open slot, it seems like we hold on to the information better. And that whole problem first, stating that first, it's like now your brain's going, oh, I've got this kind of uneasy feeling where you've asked me something. I don't know how to answer it, but now I'm eager for the answer. It's like now there's this spot to put this information in my head. Yeah. I also love that you brought that up because, I've been on Twitter for years and the format that I have found most effective is I will say problem, I'll describe it, and then I'll say the solution. And I've had people at various points ask me, hey, have you taken all these and put them into a book or whatever? And I go, yeah, that could be useful. But I would emphasize that to people. Like, I really like that you have that mindset because it creates a motivation. Yeah. And like motivation is such a big piece of it. Like I'll often do this when I'm teaching people. I will do it the hard way. So everybody sees it and goes, well, that was awful. I don't want to have to do that. I go, yeah, but now let me show you this pattern. And everybody goes, oh, yeah. So it's sort of let me make you sick and then show you how to be well.
Yeah. I really like that. So you create an itch and then you scratch the itch, right? That's a really nice way of thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I also, to be candid, I have not taken total TypeScript. So I'm blind on some of this, but you mentioned something that sounded interesting. You said something about tests. And I know like I've taken some McKinsey Dodd stuff where there's automated tests that would pass after I had done something. Is that a structure that you're using with total TypeScript?
Yeah. And it's beautifully simple as well. So there's 2 elements to it. The first element to it is testing some runtime stuff. So like I use like vtest basically. I built like a custom CLI that's a command line interface that you run each time you take an exercise, and when you do it online, it automatically runs. That basically runs the runtime tests. And then the second thing, and this is unique to TypeScript that makes it so nice to teach, is you just got to make the red lines go away, right? And once you've made the red squiggly lines go away, then you've passed the test. And so actually built into the structure of TypeScript itself is a really nice method of teaching it. Because you can literally just go, oh, no more red lines. Must have passed the test. The runtime is passing. Perfect.
Love it. I'm curious. So you're a guy that's obviously authored a course here. Have you taken many online courses?
Mostly the online courses I would take. I have taken a few. I took some when I had to learn like AWS and stuff. And a lot of stuff I took was like on YouTube and that kind of thing. When I was first, because I had to teach myself dev while I was being a singing teacher, essentially. So I did a bit of that. And actually the stuff that really really landed with me was like the Codecademy stuff, was like the inbuilt IDE where they posed you a problem and you had to fix it straight away. So that was the stuff that really got me excited, and I knew that if I wanted to make a course, I wanted that same feeling. But also the video element is really important as well, a sense that someone is sitting on a call with you that understands what you've just been through, that kind of thing. So that was my main inspirations, really, is things like Codecademy and the sort of more passive sit back kind of stuff on YouTube or sometimes Udemy. Just wasn't really for me. I didn't really fancy teaching like that.
Yeah, well, I love that you had that clarity up front, and I think, like, I'm a big believer in saying, okay, I'm going to build the thing that I wish existed. So the way that you've learned over time, and you realize, okay, this works for me or this doesn't. Strangely, even the whole person's face being shown in courses is a divisive idea. Some people like it, and some people find it distracting. So that's part of why I ask. I've explored a little bit of both, and I've had success both ways, strangely enough. So I still don't have a good sense of whether it's obviously a slam dunk. For me, I want to see someone's face. It's like, it's no contest. Like, it just feels much more interactive. So I'm curious then, are there mistakes that you see people making who are trying to author courses, or at least something that you would characterize as less than ideal?
Oh, put me on the spot there. Let me think. I think this sense of there being too much passivity, I'd say, of like trying to sort of, instead of, I think there is a sense of this teacher is not speaking to me, they're just presenting the information, right? When you're teaching this stuff, you've got to be completely mindful of the journey that the learner is going through, of exactly what they know and when. And it's very easy to just get stuck in your head and just really try to present the information as you understand it. And course creation is really an act of empathy, is an act of imagination, trying to continually imagine what is in that user's head and at that particular moment and staying with that. And so I think that people don't tailor the way that they create their courses to that. I try to, like, when I'm recording my courses, I'll always record chronologically, and I'll try to do a big chunk at a time. So I'll try to do like maybe a whole section, like 30 videos or something, like in a day or something, or sometimes in a morning if I'm feeling very productive. And I try to stay in the flow, so I'm continually, it's almost like I'm teaching that same person the same thing over time. And that means I can retain a lot of information. I can say, oh, we link back to this, link back to that, blah, 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 blah. And I think a lot of people get the idea that their courses should really look pretty. You know what I mean? Should like be beautiful cuts in. They should do like high quality that way. That their material should just look gorgeous and fantastic. But that's not the goal. Your goal isn't sugar; it's vegetables, right? It's actually just keeping with that person the whole time and giving it like a proper teaching experience. So I think that would be it. Is that you've got to design the way you build the course in a way that enhances the experience for the learner through empathy, not through showing off.
Yeah, I really like what you're emphasizing of you're trying to mirror their flow. So you're saying, like, you could go out to Hollywood and you'll find that actors have to do awkward things like, okay, now you're going to do this scene from the end of the movie right here after you did the beginning because they happen to exist in the same location. And that works okay if you've got this really clear script and you got it all lined out. But you're saying it's helpful for you to say, I'm going to try to work through the flow just like a user, because the learner, that gives me a sense of, oh, crud, actually, I haven't talked about this yet. So I need to rework this. So, and it sounds like also your work using a directed acyclic graph, thinking very carefully about the order. I found that too. Like, by the time I hit record, it should be, I am absolutely crystal clear about what I'm going to do now. And I'm confident that it needs to happen at this time. Like I front loaded all this thought and planning. And it sounds like you're the same way. Like,
yes,
that's something I learned. Like, you'll learn, you go, oh, I can't just edit in quality at the end. I've got to plan this. There's
an element of that, but I think the greatest attribute of any, at least an attribute that I have that I've found incredibly useful is the ability to improvise. So I don't write scripts for any of my content, actually. So it's all improvised off the top of my head. This means that I need to go really deep with understanding what I'm teaching, right? Because if I don't, then I just sound like a lunatic. And actually, this is a really interesting stretch goal for me with Node as well, because I've sort of worked with TypeScript for a long, long time, and I know TypeScript very deeply, and so teaching it is relatively simple. I've worked with Node professionally, but I don't have that kind of history of going deep with Node in the same way. And I think that improvisation comes across well in the learning materials too. Like I sort of seem like I know what I'm saying because I'm obviously not reading from a script. But oh man, I've forgotten the material content of your question again. My brain's all over the place.
No, you're fine. You're fine. What I was really just getting at is, you're in a place where, well, let me, actually, I'm looking at the clock. I want to honor our time here. I wanted to make sure that we had time for this. Yeah. Question for you. Imagine that I'm someone who's never authored a course before, and I say, Matt, what would you advise me to do? What are a few just short things you'd close out our conversation here with for advice for somebody?
Great question.
Considering it.
So get in the community. Get in there. Like find where it is. Answer people's questions. When someone asks you a question that you didn't really think was a question, write it down. Write it down. Keep a documented list of all the weird questions that someone might have about that thing, because those are really core to being able to be a good teacher. Because if you're surprised by someone's question, it probably means that you don't quite have the empathy for where they're coming from. You know what I mean? Like having those surprising questions is gold. From there, because obviously marketing is going to be the key thing. If you're really great at marketing, a lot of the other issues will just kind of solve themselves. And marketing is not really what it's about. It's about just being part of the community, being someone that people can ping their questions to and being responsive. And so Twitter is a great place for that. Discord is also a great place for that. If you can find a Discord server and be a part of that community. GitHub issues don't really work so well. People can't subscribe to you, you can't sort of push content to people. So Twitter really is the place to be. If you have the capability of doing video and stuff, if you like speaking, then YouTube is great too. And I think we sort of haven't talked about this yet, but I think honestly, my voice and my ability to improvise, my ability to talk at length is the key thing, is the thing that's been the most impactful. And without that, I don't think I'd have had, I would have had to work a lot harder to get to where I am. I've been able to rely, you think about me recording those 18 videos on a Sunday in my spare bedroom. That would have taken me a hell of a lot longer, maybe days, weeks, if I hadn't have been able to just crank them out with my voice. And so if you're coming to teaching courses in your non-native language, that's really tricky too. So make sure your grasp of English is incredibly fluent. You're going to have to absolutely nail this. And so, work on your voice, get in the community, and just start serving the community. Because if you serve the community, then they'll be eager to give it back.
Love it. I think that's a great place to leave it. Matt, this has been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate having you on. Just briefly, where can people find you?
Sure. They can find me on Twitter, Matt Pocock UK, or Total TypeScript. So my newsletter, I am absolutely pushing stuff out to it. I'm trying to increase the quality of the content there. And so totaltypescript.com/newsletter is a great place to be.
Fantastic. Matt, thank you for coming on. This was just a lot of fun for me.
Great. Corey, this was so much fun.
So, did you enjoy this? If so, do me a favor and click like and subscribe. I'm interviewing more developer entrepreneurs here soon. Oh, and if your team is working in React, I can help. You can find me at reactjsconsulting.com. Happy coding!